you know original equipment components are only the starting point in our product design process? In fact, they represent only the minimum standard of performance for us. DIS coils like these are an excellent example of how our engineers replicate product specs and then make improvements to overcome OE design shortcomings. This kind of thing happens here every day. A principal cause of coil failure is arcing between the secondary or outer winding and the primary or inner winding of a coil. Ouch! Geez, don't do that. This destroys the coil and often takes the ignition control module with it. It's important to note when replacing a failed module to always test the coil. A failed coil is often the cause for unnecessary module failure. Obviously, you should try to determine what caused the coil to fail in the first place. For example, a bad ignition wire is a common cause of this problem. Why does this happen, and what did we do to stop this? Current in any electrical system is always trying to find the path of least resistance. When this path is blocked for any reason, it will look for the next easiest way through the system. Unfortunately, the passage it finds in the OE design coil is to arc between the windings, or often through the bottom of the coil, using the module as a high voltage conductor. Our engineers developed a highly effective fix for this OE design shortcoming. As you can see here, our coil has a dielectric sleeve inserted between the windings. These sleeves stop arcing and therefore prevent this common coil failure. There you have it, problem solved. OE doesn't have this innovation, nor do any of our aftermarket competitors. Another Wells advantage.
Hey, welcome to another live WellsTech training event. We are so happy you are here. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about hybrids, but we're not going to be talking about how hybrids function. We're going to be talking about repairs you can do on a hybrid, even if you're not certified in hybrid, even if you don't know how hybrids work. And you're looking at a guy, I'm not certified in hybrid, and you know, I know enough to be dangerous. That's about it. I know to be cautious, be careful, right? But we do have a guy here. His name is Mike Becker. He is our newest addition to the Wells training department, and he is ASE hybrid certified. So he does know about hybrids, and he's going to help us out with this training. But before we get started, we first have how you can get one of these very cool t-shirts, like the ones that we have on. You can be on a WellsTech team. That's all you need is one of these t-shirts. All right, here's the question. In what year was the first hybrid gas-electric vehicle created? What year was the first hybrid gas-electric vehicle created? 1978, B, 1903, C, 1910, or D, 1999. It's always 1999, isn't it? All right, so there you go. Make your choice, chat it in, and if you are the first with the and your address, and I'll get it out to you tomorrow. All right, so there you go. All right, without further ado, here is Michael Becker. Come on in, Mike.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, Mike. Well, how do you like working at Wells?
I love it.
All right.
Yep.
And we get to play with all kinds of cars.
Yeah, I get to learn a lot.
Right. So it's a lot of fun. All right, but you are hybrid certified.
Yes.
And it's your chance to teach me.
All right.
Because I am not. And if I still had my shop, I'll tell you what, after doing all the research on hybrid and all that, you know, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I tools to get in. I would have a hard time justifying that.
Yeah, it is a lot of upfront costs.
And it depends upon what part of the country you're in too. But that doesn't mean, like, if I have a customer, usually what will happen is the whole family comes in and I service all their cars. So mom gets a hybrid. So what do? Send her to that's what we're going to be talking about today, right? Things we can do on that hybrid vehicle without being certified hybrid.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Exactly.
Very good. Okay. First of all, how many hybrids are sold in the country today?
Well, there's about 3.5 million hybrids.
3.5 million.
It sounds like a big number, but in the
Right.
grand scheme of the cars on the road right now, there's only 250 million cars on the road, and with only
in the United States.
Right, in the US.
250 million. Okay.
So only 3.5 million of those are hybrid, which is right around, what is that, 1%?
One
around?
or two, between 1% and 2%, I would
Right.
guess.
So it doesn't seem like very many tools.
Yeah, that's just it. And if I'm going to get a hybrid in once a year where I'm going to need these tools, it's pretty
Right.
tough to say.
It is, and it's a lot of training too to get certified
Right.
and know what you're working on.
Right. Yeah, and it's dangerous. You don't.
It is, but
That's
for
for sure.
for simple things like, like we're going to talk about, you don't have to turn them away just to do the simple things.
Okay. So are there different types of hybrids out there? Are all hybrids virtually the same?
Most hybrids are now, they're a full hybrid called, or the mild hybrids.
Okay.
A start-stop hybrid is a hybrid that uses an electric motor to help the vehicle start and accelerate, and then uses regenerative braking to, when the vehicle
Recharge
is
the
stopping,
batteries.
to recharge it. Right.
Okay.
A mild hybrid, like our Civic we're going to be looking at here in a little bit,
Okay.
it uses a hybrid battery and motor economy by 15 to 25%.
I would guess it would, because
Yeah.
that's where most of your fuel is used on
Exactly.
acceleration.
Yep. And then a full hybrid is a hybrid like most are nowadays, like your Priuses or
Okay.
across the board. There's full hybrids in almost every manufacturer, and gas mode only and both at the same time.
I see. So the mild hybrid either works on the engine or the hybrid?
Right. The mild hybrid uses the hybrid motor to boost the performance of the engine to help increase the fuel economy.
Oh, okay.
The full hybrid is going to use either EV mode if you're cruising around town or something. The car will stay in EV mode if you
Okay.
have enough charge. So you'll be just cruising if you're accelerating quickly, or if you've overcome that speed where the motor is more efficient to run than the battery is.
Okay. All right. Very good. EV is electric
Vehicle mode.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. One thing I know is be very cautious when you see the orange wires.
Yes, the orange wires are the dangerous ones. Those are the ones with
Okay.
the high voltage DC in them. Orange wires range anywhere between about 60 volts DC all the way, we've seen them up to almost 300 volts.
300 volts DC.
300 volts of DC.
Doesn't take much amperage at that point.
No, it's no joke. These high voltage wires can, if you aren't following the safety procedures, if you're
Right.
messing with them in a place where you're not supposed to be touching.
Well, let's say, I've seen those wires come through the firewall, lay across the engine or around by the engine. Let's say I'm working on something else. It's raining here now. I'm working on something else on the engine and I brush that orange wire. Is that a problem?
It's always recommended to stay away from the orange wiring, but if you do brush against it, it shouldn't be a problem. The orange wire should be covered with some sort of conduit or something where there should be nothing exposed on there.
Okay.
The hybrid system should be completely sealed, so an accidental brush up against, it shouldn't. If it's operating as it's supposed to and everything's intact.
Right. Okay, well that gives me a little peace of mind.
Right.
Plus, I believe, I've read where if there is a leak in the system,
Yep.
Okay.
Because the high voltage system wants to be isolated from the rest of the car, so you don't accidentally energize the entire
Right.
car with, 300
300
volts
volts,
DC.
that's probably not a good idea.
Right.
either.
So they have like an isolation monitor to make sure that you're not leaking any
Okay.
current over to the body.
So if it detects any leakage, boom, that's
Right.
it.
Yep.
Okay, well that's interesting.
And then you would want to have it.
There are also like blue wires and
Yep.
yellow wires. And
Yep.
What is all that
Blue
about?
wire is about 36 volts DC, used a lot on the start and stop hybrids. GM used it. So you'd see the blue wires, that's about 36.
Haven't they gotten up to 1,000 volts or something? Did I see that?
I haven't. The yellow wires are for a more mild range, somewhere around 32 to 60 volts
Okay.
DC.
So that's
the
the
yellow wires.
difference in the colors.
Correct.
So yellow doesn't hurt you as bad, but it can hurt you
It
pretty
can
bad.
definitely still hurt you, yes.
All right. So be careful of any of the colored wires.
Yeah, you always want to, those colors are big and bright like that on purpose. They want you to knowingly stay away from them.
And not just you, also first responders. I mean,
Yep.
you going in there with jaws of life, you have to know where you're cutting.
Exactly.
To make sure what's going on.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, very good. All right. Now, working on high voltage systems does require special tools.
Yep.
What are a few of those?
Special tools would include your high voltage insulated gloves.
Okay.
And then with leather protectors over them. Because if you have one little cut in that glove, high voltage could leak through the glove into your skin and then could cause electrocution.
Right. Okay.
And then your typical safety glasses, but you would need a high voltage rated meter. And then a lot of shops have like the shepherd's hook or something like that. The detachment tool is what they call it.
Yeah, I have seen about that where you'll have a long pole. It's like a 10-foot pole with a hook them off of it while they're being shot.
Right. Yep.
I would think that a better way to do that, only because you got to wait for the guy to run over there, grab the hook, and then get in position to get you, because you're not standing still either. I mean, you're being electrocuted, so you're jumping all over the place, and he's got to get that hook around you securely and pull it off.
Right.
I would think connect the power source.
Right, and that would be the best way to do it.
Okay.
The hook is kind of a last resort thing, because with DC electrical, if you end up grabbing it, there's no letting go. It locks up the muscles in your hand or whatever's touching it, and you can't let go. Not like AC where it would kind of shoot you back, or you would get last resort. That's what that tool is for, to disconnect you from the electrical system.
Okay, and so if we're going to be working on, let's say we're doing a brake job, or we're doing something that really has nothing to do with the brakes, or nothing to do with the hybrid part of it, the safety of it. Is there anything that we should do, install next to us that we're working on a hybrid?
That would be a good idea. Let the guy know next to you, say, hey, I'm working on a hybrid here. I'm not touching anything in the hybrid electrical system, but it would still be good to let him know, just in case. Maybe show him on-off switches for the high voltage battery.
That's a good idea.
Yep, and show him.
Make sure he knows what's going on.
Yep, show him where the 12-volt battery would be.
Okay.
And if you're not in the hybrid system, it shouldn't. A problem does occur.
You know what I'd like to see is like a red flag on a wire or something. You stick that in there, and that's where you shut the current off.
That's a good idea.
So then he knows. All of a sudden, he hears something odd going on over in the stall next to him. He sees that you're in trouble, and he can run back there, and he knows right where it is to disconnect it. That I just, I've never used it. I've never heard of it being used, but it just bothers me. It just takes too much time to, get that all together.
Right. Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you got to be careful of the high cables. Okay.
First of all, with an oil change, you got to make sure that the car is off all the way. Like any normal oil change you're doing, you want the key to be off.
Okay.
Well, sometimes on hybrids, it's not as simple as it sounds. It could still be in ready mode or EV mode with the engine off, and you think that it's off.
Okay.
Well, that could start up and charge the battery up while it's up on the hoist. So it's recommended to either, while you're working on that car, because when the key's not in the car, then it won't turn on, or it won't start up by itself.
Okay.
So just make sure that car is all the way off, the dash is completely dark, and then take that key with you, just as a secondary precaution.
That's probably a good habit to get in on the bench, so you know where it is. Everybody else knows where the keys are, or at least put it in your pocket so you don't have anything odd happening.
Right. The last thing you'd want it to do is start up.
Yeah, have the engine start while you have the oil drained out.
Exactly.
And it's going to take a minute or so to get it down to the point, and by that time, it could be
you're in big trouble by that time.
Could be big trouble.
And then also when you're hoisting them under, or if you're in a hurry or anything like that, don't just kick them under, because there are high voltage cables that run along the bottom of the car, and they could be close in proximity to the frame where the hoist would be sitting.
Okay.
And if the hoist were to shift or the arm were to move, it could come in contact with those high voltage cables and crush them, causing big damage and potentially
that could be one of those times that we're talking about. You need to know how to unplug this thing.
Yep.
Right. Okay, how about suspension?
Suspension on a hybrid is going to be almost exactly the same as a regular car. There might be some components on there that are hybrid only. On a hybrid, you'll always notice that wheels look a little bit different because they're going for aerodynamics. So things like that might be a little bit different where they're a hybrid only component, but there's not going to be anything high voltage or anything like that keeping you from working on it without certification.
Commonplace these days.
Yep, it is, and it's almost on every hybrid, because well, when your engine's not running, you would have no power steering pump to crank up that fluid pressure. So they run an electric power steering on them now, which a lot of newer cars do have electric power steering now, but in the later pump-driven power steering, and hybrids were already into the electric.
So if they have a regular hydraulic type power steering, you can work on that.
Yep, and the electric power steering you can work on also. It's
that's 12 volt.
Yep, it'll be 12 volt on there. It's not going to be a high voltage unless it, for whatever reason, it would have the orange or yellow or blue cables going to it. But I haven't.
That's good to know.
Yep.
Okay, brakes. We talked about that. You can normally do brake jobs on it. Maybe a little problem in the rear with the emergency brake.
Right.
Because it's electric instead of
with the electronic Ford Mercurys and Mazdas that use a self-test on the brake calipers. That it could end up testing your calipers to make sure your brakes are working while the car is turned off. So go through your owner's manual or through your shop procedure when you're doing brakes on those, so it doesn't accidentally push your calipers out.
What was that?
Mazda, Mercury, and Ford ran that.
Mazda, Mercury, and Ford. So take a note on that, guys. That's a good thing to know. You'd hate to have your fingers in there, or you hate it locked.
Exactly.
Okay. How about ACs?
AC systems on hybrids, some of them do run a high voltage AC compressor. They want to be able to run that compressor when the engine's not running.
So you're going to be able to see the orange cable coming into
Right, you'll see that going to that, and you cannot just charge that system with a normal AC recharge.
Is that right?
They run a separate oil. They run a non-conductive oil because you don't want.
Right.
So they run a special oil which you can't contaminate with a normal machine. A normal PEG oil that you would use in a normal machine doesn't work in this system. It's conductive.
Kidding.
So you have to use a special, it's called POE or polyethylene, I think it is.
So probably the best thing is stay away from the air conditioning.
Right, that is the best bet.
Yeah, stay away from that. You don't want those problems. Send that one down the road.
Hybrids use that electric motor. A lot of times the motor between the engine and the transmission is where that electric motor sits. It'll use that.
Integrated motor assist, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll use that.
Yeah.
Hey, you're learning.
There you go. I'm listening.
Starter generator assembly, specifically the Kias and the Hyundais, use again to it. Starter generator assembly, and it'll use that to crank the motor over.
Got the orange cables. That means stay away.
Don't go touching it. Exactly.
Don't be doing alternator jobs.
Yep.
Okay with that.
Well, if the 12-volt battery goes dead, you're not going to be able to go anywhere with your hybrid. It won't just start the vehicle off your big battery, your high voltage battery. It does need to see that.
Doesn't it use the 12-volt battery to close the connectors in the back?
The 12-volt battery is for that, and it's also for communication on the modules. It still uses the 12-volt battery for that if you have a no-start concern.
Right.
Most hybrids, you can just do a normal jump start, with a battery pack, or have somebody else jump start you. But it'd be best to consult your owner's manual and just make sure first.
Yeah, just make sure.
Just make sure you're not crossing any lines there.
Right.
It'll have a jump start procedure in the owner's manual for that.
How about the base engine diagnostics? Let's say I got a misfire.
A misfire code is a misfire code. On a hybrid, it's not really any different. The base engine is still almost exactly the same. Most of them are a little four-cylinder. That it's going to be an Atkinson cycle engine. And all that really means it's going to hold your intake valves open a little bit longer.
So it starts easier, spins easier.
So it spins easier, so it's not building up the compression as much.
Right.
Making
that
it
makes sense.
Increase fuel economy.
I saw where that one, I forgot what kind of engine that was. Maybe that was a Honda. And
100 RPM is fast for
that's
cranking.
amazing.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is.
I wish we had engines or starters that would do that years ago.
Right.
I would have a lot more hair. From the carburetors backfiring and all.
Yep.
How about if it does fail and I need to have it towed?
Well, towing on the hybrids, you have to get those driven wheels off the ground.
Okay.
Even if the system is turned off, the motor is attached. That electric motor is attached, and you're generating current. That can cause an overheating problem. It can fry part of your high voltage system.
And that sounds expensive.
It does. It'd be best to have it flatbed towed, or at least have the flatbed is the way to go.
If there is no flatbed, make sure you got the driven wheels up.
Because it could end up costing you. It could end up costing you a lot of money.
They're all front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive.
Yep. Where there you would have to have a flatbed.
Like I think the Saturn was that way.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. Very good. All right. That I think is it. I guess you're going to go over and talk to Dave and show a few things that we can do. Maybe put a scope on there. And
we'll just go over some of the.
All right, let's go over and do that.
All right, let's do that.
Come on. We're going to have fun. All right.
All right. So
what kind of car we got here?
here's our 2008 Honda Civic, 4-cylinder in it,
Okay.
hybrid. This is a mild hybrid,
Okay.
so meaning it doesn't run in an electric only motor or anything. It only helps, the hybrid motor only helps to help acceleration.
All right.
So this one doesn't have as many of the hybrid components as a full hybrid would, but it still has our orange cables and everything. So now we're just going to show,
The
look
blue
at
oil
it.
filter right
Yep.
here.
Yep, so our oil filter and our drain plug right here showing, you can change oil on here
Very
just like
easily.
normal. Yep.
Yep.
There's the oil filter. And that's our high voltage cable for our AC compressor on here.
Right. So you got to be aware that that's there. You really won't get it.
Exactly.
Be careful.
Yep. So then you can see here our control arms and subframe and motor mounts and
Sure.
sway bar links and
Yeah.
axles and everything. That all looks exactly the same as
Right.
a normal
Yeah, it looks
normal
like a
Honda.
regular car to me.
Exactly. So then as we work our way back here, we can see our orange cable comes in here. It's running a conduit coming up from along the firewall where it comes up over the back of the engine.
Right.
So we have our orange cable running here to this plastic cover here.
Right.
And as you can see, our hoist is out on the sides pretty far, because if you were to lift on this frame rail here,
Frame area.
like a normal technician would lift on a frame rail by
Right.
choice.
That's
well, if
where I
you-
would go.
If you would lift on that frame rail here and that hoist were to shift, it's possible you could damage that orange cable running underneath
like
the
cut
shield.
the cable. and
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
That would be a huge problem.
I see on the side here that you have an extra little lip
Yeah, there's little
kind
tabs,
of marking where it is.
like little tabs on all four corners where you would want to set the hoist.
Okay,
And-
so when you look underneath there, it's you can see that.
Right, you should be able to notice something underneath
Okay,
of where they
that's
want
a
you
good
to
point,
lift.
guys. When you make sure you lift these,
Right.
lift it from the right area.
Otherwise, check the owner's manual first just to make sure you know, or find where
Yep.
those orange cables are running, because they will run from the front to wherever the battery pack is.
Yep. You probably only have one or two of these customers coming into your shop, so once you check, you'll remember where they all are.
Exactly, yep.
You don't have to worry.
Right. So then we follow this cable back
Okay.
along the frame rail
We
here.
follow you along here.
And our black shield here has some lightning bolt symbols in them, just molded into it here. And that's
Yep.
just symbolizing that our high voltage cable is covered by this shield all the way back. And as we keep working back here, we can see the cable go up along the body. And you can see where the
Right.
exhaust is run, and it actually gets pretty close to that cable.
Yep, I can see that.
So you want to be really careful if you're doing exhaust work. Make sure your exhaust ends up back in the appropriate hangers. And if you're cutting with a torch or with a thing, you got to make sure you don't clip your high voltage cable right there.
Right, I can see it. That runs pretty darn close to that exhaust. That
Right.
must be a high temperature plastic on that.
There must be something to keep it from getting warm, yeah. So then we follow our cable back along the exhaust here, and then it goes up into the body at this grommet right here,
Right,
and that's where it's going to go up into your battery pack.
okay.
So that's where the high voltage cable ends back here, and you look around back here, it's a standard lower control arm and sway
Yeah.
bar links and springs. It all looks pretty normal.
Looks normal. How about doing rear brakes? Is there anything there?
Rear brakes on this car are completely normal. There are some newer hybrids that have an electronic parking brake.
Okay.
Now that electronic parking brake, some of them require a special service tool or a scan tool to electronically pull that caliper back.
Oh,
If
I
you were
see.
to force it back with your normal C-clamp or whatever you're using, it could actually damage the caliper.
Oh,
So this is something to note beforehand. Look at the
Right.
service procedure for brakes
so
because,
if you're doing rear brakes, look in your service manual.
yep,
Make sure.
exactly. Just better to be safe than sorry.
Right. So even though it's hybrid
Mm-hmm.
and it has a special emergency brakes, I can still work on it though?
Right, you can.
As long as I retract them properly.
Exactly. There's still on a 12 volt. There's not going to be any orange cables or anything
Okay.
going to your
And
caliper.
a
or
regular
anything like
scan
that.
tool can get in there and do that usually?
Possibly. I'm not sure what.
Not positive. Okay, so
what
check
scan
with
tool
your
works.
scan tool.
Right.
Make sure you can communicate.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we look at our fuel tank and everything back here. It just looks all completely normal, like
Yep.
a normal Honda Civic.
Right.
Nothing you really have to worry about besides keeping track of where your orange cable runs.
Right. Okay, very good.
So now we're gonna go under the hood here and show you everything that you can do under there and show that hybrids really aren't that much different than a normal car.
Right.
So
Okay.
now as Dave is lowering our car down here, we're going to see if we have any questions or comments or winners for our t-shirt question. It looks like we don't have anybody commenting in for the t-shirt. So the answer was C, 1910 electric gas vehicle.
And in 1903, that's the year Wells began. By the way, we're making OE parts for Harley Davidson.
Yep. All right, so here's our 2008 Civic. If you look under the hood here, you notice it, except for these two big orange cables right here. This smaller one here, and you can notice I can, brush up against it. It's not gonna electrocute me because it's in its conduit like it's supposed to. Go wrenching around and hitting them or bumping them if you can avoid it. So this smaller cable here is going to run underneath our intake manifold, and that's going to go to our AC compressor underneath here. Our bigger orange cable right in here is what's going to be powering our electric motor, and that's what's going to help with the acceleration, and that's what makes this the hybrid. If you look here, down in there is our transmission dipstick, just a cable, along with our brake fluid reservoir. That's close to there too, so just be careful when you're checking it out.
Now, if I was working on that master cylinder, would I have to be concerned with disconnecting that orange cable from it?
It would be a good idea to have the high voltage system turned off at this point, just because you are moving something. You would have to grab that cable and move it.
So that's a good thing to keep in mind, guys. If an orange cable is bolted, and stay away from it. Just send it to somebody that can disable the system.
Right. And so our 12-volt batteries right here, which we were talking about just before, and this, as you can see, it's it's only this big. It's a very, very small battery. It's only 290 cold cranking amps. Hybrid, being Atkinson mechanical starter under there. So to use that mechanical starter or the hybrid motor to start this up, so they can get away with using a smaller, lighter battery. A lighter battery means better fuel economy. The car is lighter. So you can service this 12-volt battery just like you would service a normal 12-volt battery. So as we move further this way, we have our air box and our mass airflow sensor and throttle body and all that, and it looks pretty normal. Exactly. Now if we look under our cover right here, you can see this is a little bit different here. On our hybrid 1.3 liter here, Honda runs 8 total ignition coils. Motor, not all hybrids are going to have 8 spark plugs and ignition coils, but just be aware that if you're diagnosing a misfire or something, a P0301 or whatever, be aware that you have two ignition coils and 2 spark plugs on that circuit.
Right.
Still, Honda recommends 0W20 oil in this one, a lightweight oil, and our dipstick tube here, and this car actually still has an electronic EGR valve. A lot of newer hybrids.
Yeah, regular old digital EGR.
Right, yep. A lot of newer hybrids will actually get away from the EGR valve and go to variable valve timing, like most cars are. And stuff, that's all fine to work on. The only thing is you want to be careful. Your AC compressor down there is high voltage right down in here. So just be aware that it's there when you're changing the high voltage system if you're just doing a belt. So we hooked up our little U-scope here, our 1-channel scope that we got from AES Wave. We hooked this up to our throttle position sensor, and we just wanted to show that our throttle position sensor on this car is just like any other car. So we're going to set it on our 5-volt scale, and we're going to turn our time way up here, and you'll notice that as Dave pushes on the accelerator pedal, it's going to go up to the 5-volt mark and back down, and it's just like any standard throttle position sensor.
And look tested.
Exactly. So it's just another way to show that this hybrid isn't some scary thing that everything's different on it. This is a prime example of it's not different than what you're working on every day.
Right.
This one does use 2 throttle position sensors, redundant sensors, for the electronic throttle body.
Very good.
All right, so this just not that much different to work on really than a standard 4-cylinder engine. You have your air filter, your maintenance for that, and your oil changes, and even your transmission fluid checking, and your battery, and your EGR, and all that stuff. It's exactly the same as a standard. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's you know, I got a good peace of mind with this. You know,
Right.
I feel a lot better about working on.
And that's what we want to stress here is that it doesn't have to be scary as long as you know
Right.
what you're looking for and what you're doing.
Yep.
Just
to be aware.
stay away from your orange cables and
Right. Have to do anything near those orange cables, send it to somebody that can, you know, is certified in it, knows how to,
Yep.
has the right equipment to do the job right and safe. That's
Right.
that's the biggest thing here is just to remain safe.
Yep, safety is number one.
Yep. So and again, we'll reiterate a little bit. You know, excuse me. So if I was still in the shop, what I would do is I would say, okay, who's ever working next to me, this is where the disconnect goes. So
To
I'd
get to
pull
it.
that back seat out before I'm going to do the work on this thing, and I would let him know. I would make sure he knows where to disconnect
Right.
the high power,
Yep.
and even put it like a little red flag on there when obvious. This is where you
Right.
go.
Yep, because that way you stay safe.
Right, and if anything does happen, just get over here and pull that, and at least we'll stop the current flow for the. Yeah, very good, and I honestly do feel a lot more comfortable
Well, yeah.
after the.
Come into your shop, you know, for a check engine light or a brake
Right.
concern or suspension concern.
Yeah.
You can feel confident in knowing that you can work on almost all those components without even messing with those big orange cables.
without even getting it on the head.
I think that just about does it.
Okay, me too. We do appreciate you being here, and stop back next time. I'm sure we're going to have something good. How hybrids work and the tools that you need to work on them. Jim Bates is going to be here as a guest, so look forward to that next month.
Yeah.
All right?
All right. Sounds
Okay.
good.
We do appreciate you being here. Without you being there, we would not be here. And we'll see you again next time in the WellsTech Garage.
All right.